The first thing Daniel Whitmore noticed every morning was the untouched breakfast tray. It sat outside his mother's bedroom door like a silent accusation. Silver cover plates, fresh fruit, warm oatmeal, toast with imported butter, a glass of orange juice squeezed from oranges flown in from California. Sometimes there were pancakes, sometimes eggs prepared exactly the way his mother used to like them. And every morning, every single morning, the tray came back untouched. Daniel stood in the hallway of his $20 million mansion, staring at the tray as if it were a problem he could solve with enough money. He was 38 years old, the owner of a growing technology empire, and according to every business magazine, one of the most successful young millionaires in the country. Yet there was one thing his money couldn't buy: his mother's appetite. Again, he whispered. The housekeeper, Mrs. Collins, stood several feet away with her hands folded nervously in front of her. Yes, Mr. Whitmore. She didn't eat anything? Not even the juice. Daniel closed his eyes. How long has it been? Mrs. Collins hesitated. Nearly 3 months. Daniel looked at her sharply. I know she hasn't been eating properly. I asked how long. Mrs. Collins lowered her voice. She hasn't had a real meal in almost 3 months, sir. Daniel's jaw tightened. His mother had always been a strong woman. Eleanor Whitmore had raised him alone after his father died when Daniel was 12. She had worked 2 jobs, sold her jewelry, and even taken loans from friends so Daniel could attend the best schools. She had been the kind of woman who could walk into a room and make everyone feel safe. But after Daniel became wealthy, something changed. At first, she had simply become quieter. Then she stopped attending family dinners. Then she stopped eating. Doctors came. Specialists came. Nutritionists came. A psychiatrist came. Daniel hired private nurses and flew in a famous medical consultant for Boston. Everyone gave him a different explanation. Depression, grief, age, loss of purpose, medication side effects. But none of them could make Eleanor eat. Has the doctor called? Daniel asked. Dr. Harris is coming at 11. Daniel glanced at his watch. It's 8. He said he wanted to see her before she had her next appointment. Daniel nodded. Then he looked toward his mother's bedroom. I'll talk to her. Mrs. Collins looked uncomfortable. Mr. Whitmore. What? She doesn't want to see anyone. She'll see me. Daniel walked toward the door and knocked gently. Mom. No answer. He knocked again. Mom, it's me. Silence. Daniel opened the door slowly. The curtains were closed, even though sunlight was pouring across the rest of the mansion. The room was cool and dim. His mother sat beside the window in an old beige sweater, staring outside. She looked smaller than Daniel remembered. Her once thick silver hair was pulled into a loose bun. Her face had become thin, and the skin beneath her eyes was dark. Daniel's chest tightened. Mom. Eleanor didn't turn. I told them I didn't want breakfast. I know. Then why do they bring it? Because they're worried about you. I'm tired of people worrying about me. Daniel walked closer. You haven't eaten. I ate. When? She paused. Yesterday. What did you eat? Eleanor looked at him. A piece of toast. That's not enough. It was enough for me. Daniel sat across from her. You can't keep doing this. Her eyes softened. I know. Then eat. I can't. Why? I don't know. Daniel leaned forward. You've had every doctor in the state tell you there's nothing physically wrong. I know. Then tell me what's wrong. Eleanor looked toward the window again. For several seconds, neither spoke. Finally, she whispered, Food doesn't taste like anything anymore. Daniel frowned. What do you mean? I mean it tastes empty. He didn't understand. It's food, Mom. She gave a faint smile. That's exactly the problem. Before Daniel could respond, his phone rang. He looked at the screen. His chief financial officer. He rejected the call. His phone rang again. He rejected it again. His mother noticed. You should answer. It can wait. No, your company can't wait. You're more important. Eleanor looked at him with sadness. Daniel, you keep saying that. Because it's true. Then why do you keep leaving? The question hit him harder than he expected. Daniel looked down. He had no answer. His company had grown rapidly during the last 5 years. He had traveled constantly. Meetings in New York, conferences in San Francisco, investors in London. He had bought this mansion because he thought it would give his mother comfort. He had filled it with everything money could buy. But somewhere along the way, he had forgotten the one thing she wanted. Him. "I'll stay today," he said. Eleanor shook her head. "You'll leave." "I won't." "You always do." Daniel reached for her hand. She let him hold it. Her fingers were frighteningly thin. "Mom," he said quietly, "I don't know how to fix this." For the first time, tears appeared in her eyes. "You don't have to fix me." "Then what am I supposed to do?" "Sit with me." Daniel swallowed. So he stayed. For almost an hour. He didn't check his phone. He didn't talk about business. He didn't ask about food. He simply sat beside his mother. And for the first time in months, Eleanor fell asleep while holding his hand. That afternoon, Daniel interviewed 3 new cooks. The mansion had employed professional chefs for years, but none lasted long. One chef demanded complete control of the kitchen. Another complained that Eleanor was impossible to please. The third resigned after 2 weeks because she said the atmosphere was too depressing. Daniel didn't care anymore. He wanted someone different. Someone who understood food as more than expensive ingredients. The final candidate arrived at 4 o'clock. Her name was Clara Bennett. She was 31, dressed simply in black pants and a pale blue blouse. She carried no expensive culinary portfolio, no assistant, no impressive certificates displayed in a leather folder. Just a small notebook. Daniel looked through her application. "You've worked at restaurants?" "Yes." "Luxury restaurants?" "Some." "Michelin starred?" "One." "Why did you leave?" Clara hesitated. "Because I didn't like what cooking had become." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "What did it become?" "A competition." He studied her. "And what should it be?" Clara looked directly at him. "Care." Daniel wasn't expecting that answer. He leaned back. "My mother hasn't eaten properly in months." "I heard. She refuses almost everything." "I see. Doctors can't help." "I'm not a doctor." "I know. Then why am I here?" "Because everyone else has failed." Clara nodded slowly. "That's not a very good reason to hire someone." Daniel almost smiled. "You're honest." "I try to be." "What would you cook for her?" Clara looked toward the mansion kitchen. "May I see it?" Daniel gestured for her to follow. The kitchen was larger than the apartment Clara rented. Commercial-grade ovens. Imported marble counters. Refrigerators filled with ingredients most people never saw in their entire lives. Clara opened one refrigerator. She stared for a moment. "Do you have a garden?" Daniel blinked. "A garden?" "Yes." "Of course." "Vegetables?" "Some." "Fresh herbs?" "Probably." Clara closed the refrigerator. "Then I don't need this." She pointed toward the expensive ingredients. Daniel frowned. "What do you mean?" "I need something simple." "Simple. Chicken broth. Potatoes. Carrots. Fresh herbs. Maybe some homemade bread." Daniel stared at her. "That's it. For tonight." "She won't eat that." "Maybe." "She's rejected meals prepared by chefs who charge $500 a plate." Clara smiled slightly. "Maybe that's why." Daniel crossed his arms. "You're saying expensive food is the problem?" "No." "Then what?" Clara looked at him. "Maybe she doesn't need food." Daniel's expression hardened. "She hasn't eaten." "I know. So she needs food. Her body does." Clara paused. "But maybe her heart needs something else." Daniel didn't speak. Something about the way she said it reminded him of his mother. "What do you need from me?" "Nothing." "Nothing." "Don't tell me what she likes." Daniel frowned. "Why?" "Because then I'll cook what you remember." And people change. He looked at her for a long moment. Finally, he nodded. "You start tomorrow." Clara shook her head. "No." Daniel looked surprised. "I start tonight." At 6:30, Clara entered the kitchen alone. She tied her hair back, washed her hands, and opened the pantry. She ignored the imported truffles, ignored the expensive cheeses, ignored the premium cuts of meat. She took out potatoes, carrots, celery, onions, chicken, fresh parsley. She worked quietly. Daniel watched from the doorway. He didn't understand what she was doing. There was no dramatic plating, no complicated sauce, no expensive equipment, just a pot simmering on the stove. The smell slowly spread through the mansion. Daniel hadn't smelled anything like it in years. It smelled like home. He remembered being 10 years old, his mother standing in their tiny kitchen, rain tapping against the window, a pot of chicken soup bubbling on the stove. Daniel had been sick that week, and Eleanor had sat beside his bed all night. "You need to eat," she had told him. I don't want to. She had smiled. Then just take one spoon. One. He had taken a spoon. Then another. Then another. Daniel's eyes suddenly filled with tears. Clara noticed him. You okay? He quickly looked away. Fine. She didn't ask again. At 7, Clara poured the soup into a simple white bowl. She placed a small piece of warm bread beside it. Then she carried the tray upstairs. Daniel followed. Wait, he whispered. Clara stopped. Let me talk to her first. No. Daniel stared at her. Excuse me. Don't tell her she has to eat. Why? Because then she'll feel trapped. Daniel lowered his voice. She needs to eat, and she will. You sound very confident. I'm not. She knocked on Eleanor's door. No answer. Clara opened it. Eleanor was awake. Her eyes moved toward the tray. She immediately looked away. Not hungry, she said. Clara didn't argue. She walked to the small table beside the window and placed the soup there. I'm Clara. Eleanor glanced at her. You're the new cook. Yes. I don't need a cook. I know. Eleanor looked confused. Clara sat in the chair across from her. Daniel remained near the doorway. Clara pointed at the bowl. I made too much. Eleanor smiled faintly. You expect me to believe that? No. Then why bring it? Because I don't like wasting food. Eleanor almost laughed. Almost. Clara stood. I'll leave it here. Daniel watched as Clara walked toward the door. Eleanor called after her. Wait. Clara stopped. What is it? What kind of soup? Chicken. Eleanor looked at the bowl. With carrots? Yes. Celery? Yes. Parsley? Clara smiled. Fresh. Eleanor stared at it. Daniel held his breath. Then Eleanor whispered, My son used to hate celery. Daniel froze. Clara looked at him. Really? Eleanor nodded. He used to pick every piece out. Daniel smiled, despite himself. I still do. Eleanor looked at him. You remember? Of course I remember. You remember a lot of useless things. Daniel walked closer. I remember everything about you. Eleanor looked away. Clara quietly left the room. Daniel sat beside his mother. The soup remained untouched. For 10 minutes. Then 15. Daniel didn't say anything. At 20 minutes, Eleanor reached toward the bowl. Daniel's heart nearly stopped. She picked up the spoon. She smelled the soup. Then she took the smallest sip. Her eyes closed. Daniel watched her face. Something changed. Not dramatically. Not like a miracle. Just a tiny shift. A memory returning. Eleanor took another spoonful. Then another. She suddenly began crying. Daniel leaned toward her. Mom. She shook her head. I am sorry. For what? I forgot what this tasted like. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. She continued eating. Slowly. One spoonful at a time. By the time the bowl was half empty, Daniel was crying too. He didn't care. He had watched his mother reject hundreds of meals. He had watched doctors shake their heads. He had watched her become weaker every week. And now she was eating soup. Not because it was expensive. Not because a doctor ordered her to. Because somehow, the taste had reminded her of something she had lost. When Clara returned to collect the tray, she stopped at the doorway. The bowl was almost empty. She didn't smile. She simply nodded. Would you like anything else? Eleanor looked at her. Do you make bread? Yes. Tomorrow. Of course. And soup, if you'd like. Eleanor nodded. Then she said something that made Daniel's heart stop. Could you make the soup the way I used to make it for my son? Clara glanced at Daniel. Daniel couldn't speak. Eleanor continued. When he was little, Clara smiled gently. I'd be honored. She took the tray downstairs. Daniel followed her. You did it. Clara shook her head. No, she ate. She remembered. Daniel looked at her. Remembered what? Clara stopped walking. That someone once cooked for her because they loved her. Daniel stared at her. The words cut deeper than any accusation. Because he suddenly realized something. His mother hadn't been surrounded by neglect. She had been surrounded by everything except love. The next morning, Daniel woke before sunrise. For the first time in years, he didn't check his emails. He walked downstairs. The kitchen lights were already on. Clara was there. She was kneading dough. Daniel watched silently. What are you making? Breakfast. For Mom. For everyone. Daniel looked at the clock. It's 5:30. I know. Do you always wake up this early? Usually. What? Clara shrugged. Good food takes time. Daniel smiled. Then he noticed something on the counter. An old photograph. It was a picture of Eleanor holding a young Daniel in her arms. Daniel frowned. Where did you get that? Clara looked at the photograph. Your mother showed it to me. When? Last night. Daniel picked it up. His mother had kept the photograph in a drawer for years. He had never seen it. She talked to you? Yes. What did she say? Clara hesitated. She said she misses the boy in this picture. Daniel's smile disappeared. She misses me? Not exactly. Clara returned to kneading the dough. She misses the version of you who had time for her. Daniel stood completely still. His phone began vibrating in his pocket. His business partner. Another meeting. Another crisis. Another flight. Daniel pulled the phone out. He stared at the screen. Then he turned it off. Clara looked at him. Everything okay? Daniel put the phone away. For the first time in a long time. Upstairs, Eleanor woke to the smell of fresh bread. She slowly sat up. For months, food had meant pressure. Doctors, medication, arguments, fear. But this smell was different. It reminded her of a small kitchen, a little boy, a rainy morning, and a promise she had made to herself long ago. She opened the door. Daniel was standing in the hallway. Morning, Mom. Eleanor looked at him. You're still here. I am staying. She smiled. Until when? Daniel looked toward the kitchen. Until you tell me to leave. For the first time in months, Eleanor laughed. It was quiet, weak, but real. And neither of them noticed Clara standing downstairs, listening. Because Clara had already begun to understand that this wasn't really a story about a woman who had stopped eating. It was a story about a family that had forgotten how to sit at the same table. And Clara had no idea that before this week was over, she would uncover a secret Eleanor had kept from Daniel for nearly 20 years. A secret that would change everything Daniel believed about his father's death, his mother's suffering, and the fortune he had spent his entire life building.